I'm Anna. I'm 35, a nurse, and for some reason, I thought this year would be different. I spent the morning preparing home-cooked meals, decorating the little cake I made by hand, wrapping the napkins in the color Mom liked. I even wore that blue blouse she once said looked nice on me. When I arrived, my sister met me at the door with a smirk and said, "The kitchen's over there. You know how it's done." Behind her, everyone was already gathered. My parents, my sister's husband, their kids, even his parents. Laughing, toasting. They had started without me. And it hit me, I wasn't invited to join. I was summoned to serve. I should have known the moment I got the group text. "Hey Anna, if you could make that potato bake Mom loves, and maybe bring some of your homemade punch? The kids love it." Smiley face. There was no mention of a seat saved for me. "No, we can't wait to see you." Just a casual request to cook, like I was the hired help. But I told myself, maybe this time they'd notice. Maybe they'd say thank you. Maybe they'd remember I'm not made of steam and silence. The hope didn't come from logic. It came from something quieter, a childlike ache that never quite died. I wanted to be part of it, not standing on the edge of warmth like someone peeking through a frosted window, but inside it. Sitting, laughing, asked about, missed. I carried the food in alone. No one came to help me from the car, even though I sent a message saying I was there. I walked up the driveway past a row of cars, voices inside already high with celebration. When I opened the door, nobody turned. It was my sister, Chloe, who finally noticed me. Or rather, noticed the dishes in my arms. She stepped forward, grinning, but not in greeting. "Kitchen's over there, you know how it's done," she said. Like it was a joke. Like it was funny. That smile, the kind that says, "This is your place and you know it," is a strange thing to receive from someone who used to sleep beside you as a child. We once shared a bunk bed and whispered secrets in the dark. Now her eyes didn't even meet mine. I froze. Not just because of her words, but the way she said them. The way her eyes skipped over me, right to the foil-wrapped pans. The way she turned back toward the living room, not bothering to see if I needed help, or even to ask how I was. I stood there, clutching a dish that was still warm in my hands, as if the heat might somehow thaw the cold in my chest. From the living room, I heard my mother laugh. She was wearing the shawl I gave her last year, the one she didn't even thank me for until weeks later, when I followed up to make sure the package arrived. She clinked a glass with Chloe's husband, said something about how everything is perfect, just like Chloe planned. Perfect, like Chloe planned. Of course, Chloe had orchestrated the whole thing. I was just the extra pair of hands. I walked into the kitchen. It was spotless. Already clean. Which meant they didn't expect me to just drop off food. They expected me to cook, serve, clean up, to make myself useful, invisible. No one offered me a drink. No one asked how my shift had been. I had worked a 12-hour overnight at the hospital, then gone straight to the store, then baked and packed and drove 40 minutes. And still, I thought I could show up and be seen. Not just looked at. Seen. I set the pans on the counter slowly. My hands trembled a little. From exhaustion, yes. But mostly from the sting rising up my spine. My niece ran past me without saying hello. My brother-in-law brushed past and said, "Oh great, Anna brought the food," like I was a tray on legs. My father saw me. I know he did. But he just nodded vaguely and looked away. He was laughing too hard at something Chloe's father-in-law had said. Something about nurses being glorified waitresses. And everyone laughed. Even Mom. I stood there, the irony sinking in, trying not to crumble in the middle of the tile. I told myself, maybe they don't mean it. Maybe they're just thoughtless. But even that gave them too much credit. Thoughtlessness is a habit. Repetition turns it into a belief. They believed I was there to serve. I tried to pull a chair up to the table once everything was set. Chloe looked over and frowned. "Oh, Anna, can you refill the drinks? Dad likes the punch strong, remember?" I nodded. I don't know why. Muscle memory. Shame. something older than both. As I poured, my mom walked by and smiled faintly. "Oh, honey, don't forget the napkins." No hug. No, thank you. No, how are you? There was no eye contact. That was always the sign. When they looked past me, around me, through me, but never at me. I used to wonder what I had done wrong. Now I wondered what they'd done to themselves to become so numb to a person in their own family. The thing is, I love them. Or I did. But love that constantly costs you your dignity becomes something else. Something hollow. They laughed louder in the other room. Chloe made a toast. I heard my name mentioned once. Anna brought the punch, of course. She's the best at that. Of course. No one invited me to sit. Not once. I stood there by the kitchen counter, watching them through the doorway like I was behind glass. Like I wasn't even real to them. Just a hand that cooks, a car that delivers, a smile that never asks for anything. There was a brief moment when my mother caught my eye. For a second, I thought she might say something. But she just smiled politely and turned away. She didn't want to see what was really there. Maybe because then she'd have to admit what she let happen for years. The worst part? I still waited. I waited for anyone, to notice I hadn't eaten. That I was standing. That I was tired. That I was, in fact, human. That was the moment. Not one big explosion. Just the slow, sinking feeling that I was disappearing, and they liked it that way. I didn't say anything. Not yet. But inside, something quiet began to unravel. It felt like a string pulling loose in a tightly wound cloth. I didn't know what it would become. Only that it had started. The silence after that day followed me home like a shadow I couldn't shake. I didn't cry in the car on the drive back. I didn't rage or scream or throw the leftover food I had packed for myself onto the passenger seat. I just drove. Quiet. Blank. The kind of quiet where even your thoughts feel too loud. The kind of blank that comes not from peace, but from a grief so deep it hasn't decided how to show itself yet. When I walked into my apartment, the smell of cake frosting and garlic clung to me like someone else's perfume. I sat on the couch in my shoes, coat still on, and stared at the wall. I thought about the sound of my mother's voice when she said, "Everything is perfect, just like Chloe planned." Not just like we planned. Not even, thanks to Anna for making it so special. No. Chloe planned. Chloe executed. Chloe smiled. I was just the function behind the curtain. The lighting tech. The invisible cook. What did it mean to them that I was there? Nothing. And it wasn't just this time. It had been every time. Every year, every holiday, every event where I offered, hoped, gave, and was met with that same polite dismissal. I remembered last Christmas, when I bought presents for everyone, carefully chosen. Chloe had shown up with one giant bag of random stuff, no tags, no wrapping, and everyone laughed, saying she was quirky. Mom said, "It's the thought that counts." When I asked if she liked what I got her, she barely remembered. I remembered Easter, when Chloe didn't come because she was tired, and I still drove 3 hours to bring pies and help clean up. My father said, "That's my dependable girl," like I was an employee he was complimenting during a quarterly review. Not his daughter. Dependable. Quiet. Helpful. These were my adjectives. Chloe was vibrant. Funny. Beautiful. Always a little late, but never punished for it. If she forgot something, it was endearing. If I forgot something, it was irresponsible. There was a photo album in my lap before I even realized I had opened it. I kept it on the coffee table. The older pictures told the truth, even when my memory tried to soften it. In every family photo, I was standing slightly behind. Chloe had her arms around someone. I had my hands folded. In the birthday video from when we were kids, Chloe blew out the candles. I had baked the cake with Mom, but Chloe wore the crown. When I won the school science fair, Mom posted once on her page, "So proud of both my girls." Chloe helped Anna test her project. Chloe had helped by spilling vinegar and laughing about it. But Mom needed to make her feel included. That was always the priority. At my graduation from nursing school, they clapped politely. At Chloe's art showcase for paintings she didn't finish, they brought wine and cried. It wasn't even favoritism anymore. It was tradition. A family habit passed down like recipes and heirlooms. Chloe shined. Anna served. And what hurt the most was that they didn't even seem to notice. I was the wall that held their moments together. The quiet place where the celebrations rested. No one thanks the wall. They only notice if it cracks. Sitting on that couch, still in my coat, I let the memories pass through me like cold wind. Not to punish myself, but to finally see clearly. Each one was a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying. And I resented them. Not for being happy, but for building that happiness on my silence. They used my love like paper towels. Quick, convenient, disposable. I replayed my sister's voice. Kitchen's over there, you know how it's done. It wasn't just a sentence. It was a verdict, a stamp, a reminder of where I belonged. And my mother's soft, absent smile. Her refusal to meet my eyes. That small moment haunted me more than the loud laughter. Because it said, I see you. And I'm choosing not to act. Even the group chat messages that followed, their digital applause for Chloe's perfect party, cut deeper than they realized. Thanks everyone for today. Such a success. Couldn't have been more perfect. Thanks Anna for the food. I was a footnote. An ingredient. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed with the light off, phone in hand, the words blurring as I stared at them. Somewhere between the lines, I understood. They didn't mean harm, maybe, but they didn't mind it either. The next morning, Marcus texted me. My friend. My one person who saw more than what was convenient. You okay? And for once, I didn't say, yeah, just tired. I didn't deflect. I just said no. He called immediately. I answered. And when he asked what happened, I told him. All of it. From the kitchen door to the photo albums to the way my mother couldn't hold my gaze. I don't remember every word, but I remember the silence when I finished. And then Marcus said, they don't deserve you. And for the first time in my life, I didn't argue. Instead, I whispered, I don't want to go back. And he said, then don't. A moment passed. My chest rose, then fell. For the first time in years, I felt like I was breathing my own air. The shift didn't begin with a declaration. It started with something much quieter, something like stillness. It wasn't even a refusal at first. It was a breath. A long, slow exhale after years of holding in the need to scream. Outside, the rain came down in soft sheets. I watched it from the kitchen table, tea cooling beside my hands, the kind of gray morning that feels like the world is wrapped in a thin veil. Inside, there was no music, no phone buzzing. Just silence. And that silence held something I hadn't felt in years. Space. The family chat was buzzing. Chloe had already posted photos from the night before. My food. Her setup. Her name in the captions. Another masterpiece by Chloe. One of our cousins wrote. Mom had replied, you outdid yourself again, sweetie. No one mentioned me. Not even in passing. Not a single, and thanks to Anna for the amazing food. Even my aunt, who used to say I reminded her of Grandma, the quiet one, the one who held everything together, joined in the chorus of praise. I muted the chat. Not angrily. Just because I had nothing left to say. I wasn't sad. Not in the traditional sense. I didn't feel the weight of grief, exactly. It was more like a stillness that came when you realized the noise had been hurting you all along. For years, I had shown up. With food, with gifts, with time, with care. And for just as many years, they had responded with oversight, with forgetfulness, with praise for everyone else. When Chloe was late, she was busy. When I was late, it was typical. When Chloe forgot a birthday, it was understandable. When I forgot to bring napkins, it was disappointing. Their bar for me was higher, but their gratitude lower. I opened my calendar and stared at the date. Dad's birthday was 2 weeks away. Chloe had likely already started planning. I could almost hear her voice. Anna, You'll do the desserts, right? The cinnamon rolls. The pies. The things Dad liked. The things I made because no one else remembered how. This time, I closed the calendar. Instead of prepping menus or shopping lists, I cleaned my space. My home. I scrubbed the corners I always neglected. Reorganized my shelves. Made a simple lunch and ate it while it was still hot. No rushing. No splitting attention. Just being. That afternoon, I sat on the couch, lit a candle, and picked up a book I'd been meaning to read for years. I read without guilt. Then the phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. When it ended, I waited before listening. Hi, sweetheart. Just wanted to say thank you again for the food yesterday. Chloe said you left kind of early. Hope you're okay. Anyway, we're thinking of doing something small for Dad's birthday, maybe brunch. I'm sure Chloe will reach out soon with details. Love you. Her voice was casual, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't seen me leave early. Like she hadn't seen me not sit down, not eat, not laugh. The thank you felt like someone brushing crumbs off the table. The kind of gratitude you offer because you were told it's polite. And the way she said, Chloe will reach out soon, like Chloe was the manager and I the help, told me everything I needed to know. I didn't call back. Later that night, I went for a walk. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick, reflecting the soft glow of the lamps. My breath fogged in the air. It felt like stepping into myself. That's when Marcus texted, "You still good?" I replied, "Yeah, not going to Dad's brunch." He called. I told him everything. I told him about the call, the chat, the cinnamon rolls I wouldn't be baking. And when he made a joke, a party where they won't let you sit down, I laughed. A real laugh. One that sounded foreign in my own ears. I wish more people saw it, he said, after the silence returned. That's when something flickered in me. Would you tell someone? I asked. I already did, he replied. I sat up straighter. What do you mean? I wrote to someone. I didn't use names. Just told them what I've seen. What you've lived. You deserve better than invisibility. I could barely breathe. Who did you tell? He hesitated, then said, Oprah's team. At first, I laughed. Then I realized he wasn't joking. I follow their platform, he said. I've seen stories like yours. People who've been overlooked, used, written off. They listen. Part of me wanted to protest. Another part, stronger, didn't. Okay, I whispered. The next week moved slowly. I didn't speak to my family. They didn't reach out either. The silence, for once, felt like protection. 3 days later, the email arrived. From a producer named Julia. She said she'd heard about my story, that it resonated. That she wanted to talk, only if I was open. I sat with that email for a long time. Then I wrote back. We scheduled a call. Julia had a soft voice and asked thoughtful questions. She never pushed. Just listened. At the end, she said, we'd love to have you share. If and when you're ready. And I said yes. Not to expose anyone. Not for bitterness. But because walls, even the quiet ones, deserve to be seen. The podcast was released on a Wednesday. I didn't know what to expect. I had told the truth, nothing more. No names, no bitterness, just facts wrapped in my voice. I sat in the studio beneath soft lights, across from Oprah. The space was warm. Safe. She asked, how did it feel to be left out, again and again? And I answered, like I didn't have the right to belong. Like love had rules. Like I failed every test and didn't know why. When the episode aired, I turned off my phone. I wasn't scared. I just needed space. By evening, my inbox was full. Dozens of messages. Most from strangers. A woman wrote, I thought it was just me. Thank you. Another said, I cried when you talked about standing in the kitchen, holding food, while they laughed without you. I've been there. And then came the messages from people I knew, but not well. Former classmates. Neighbors. A few nurses I worked with but never got close to. All saying the same thing, I see you now. By the end of the week, The episode had gone viral. Julia texted, "Are you okay with all this?" And I was. Strangely. Peacefully. But my family? That was different. The first message came from Chloe. It wasn't long. "Wow. Guess we know how you really feel." No greeting. No question. Just accusation dressed as surprise. I didn't answer. Then Mom called. 3 times. Left 2 voicemails. The first was soft. Confused. "Why didn't you tell us you felt this way?" The second was sharper. "You embarrassed us, Anna. You've really hurt your sister. She's devastated." No mention of me. Of how I had been hurt. Then came the group chat. They hadn't used it since the party. Now it lit up. "Can we talk? This has gotten out of hand. You should have come to us directly." They didn't say they were sorry. They didn't say they had listened to the whole thing. Just that it caused trouble. That it made them uncomfortable. And I stayed silent. Because silence had always been my place. But now it was my choice. Marcus stopped by the next day. He brought soup and a smile. We didn't talk much. Just sat. He said, "You know they'll rewrite this in their heads, right?" "I know," I replied. "But I'm not in their story anymore." He smiled, and we let the silence return. The next day, my neighbor knocked on the door. Mrs. Patel. She held a pie. "I watched that podcast," she said. "You spoke for more people than you know." I thanked her, took the pie, and we stood there a moment. 2 women. 2 histories. Both changed by a single story told honestly. The fallout in my family spread fast. Invitations withdrawn. Messages unanswered. A few relatives reached out to say they understood, but from a distance. Mom sent one last email. "We just wanted peace, Anna. You could have handled this differently." And she was right. I could have stayed quiet. Again. But peace that requires your silence isn't peace. It's a transaction. And I had stopped paying. I closed the email, deleted the group chat, packed a small bag, and left town for the weekend. Just me. No explanations. I drove until the highway grew narrow and unfamiliar. I stayed at a quiet bed and breakfast near the coast. No television. Just a window, a kettle, and a bookshelf filled with stories from people I would never meet. Each morning, I walked along the beach, the wind pulling at my coat, the ocean churning like something ancient and honest. I didn't bring my phone. I didn't take photos. I let each moment be mine and mine alone. In the silence, I thought about who I had been. How many versions of me I had buried to be what they needed. The reliable one. The one who didn't complain. The background. But now, I was becoming something else. Not louder. Not angrier. Just more real. One afternoon, I sat on a driftwood log and wrote in a notebook I hadn't touched in years. Not a diary. Just fragments. Truths. Small sentences I needed to say. You are allowed to take up space. Your silence was not love. Being needed is not the same as being loved. I didn't cry. I just wrote. On the 3rd night, I had dinner in the little common room. A couple was there, older, kind. We shared bread and soup and gentle conversation. The woman said, "You seem lighter than when you arrived." And I smiled. I think I am. When I drove home Sunday evening, the roads were wet, the sky quiet. I arrived to a dark apartment. But it didn't feel lonely. It felt like a beginning. I unpacked slowly, watered my plants, took a hot shower. Then I made tea, lit a candle, and sat. No one knew where I had been. And no one asked. And that, too, was telling. But I didn't mind, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting to be seen. I had seen myself. The letter came on a Monday morning, tucked between a piece of junk mail and a utility bill. At first, I didn't notice it, just a plain envelope, handwritten, unfamiliar. I almost tossed it aside. But something made me pause. The return address was from another city. No name. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. No stationery, no logo, just black ink and careful words. Dear Anna. I don't know you, but I heard your voice. I saw the stillness in your story, and it reminded me of my mother. She spent her life serving people who didn't see her. I used to think that was just the way things were. But now I know we can choose different. You helped me see that. Thank you. I'm going to nursing school this fall. Because of you. There was no signature. Just, with gratitude, a listener. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, holding that letter. Not crying. Not overwhelmed. Just full. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was mine. A place to rest, not a sentence. Later that day, I made a cup of tea and sat by the window. The steam curled upward, and for once, I wasn't waiting for someone to need me. I wasn't anticipating the next call, the next ask, the next obligation disguised as love. The days that followed moved gently. My family remained quiet. Occasionally, Chloe would post online, pictures of brunches, outings, holidays, but without the usual swarm of likes. I noticed certain names missing from the comments. A shift. Small, but visible. One day, I got an email from a former teacher. Your voice mattered, she wrote. I wish I had told you that back then. I read it twice. Smiled. Closed my laptop. I made no announcements. No declarations. But I began to say no. No to overworking. No to being the fallback plan. No to offers that came with expectations, but no respect. It wasn't dramatic. It was steady. The shift began to show up in the smallest ways. I took lunch breaks. I declined extra shifts. I returned calls on my own time. I spent time alone not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Sometimes, I'd get a message from my mother. They always started the same way, hope you're well, and ended with a gentle prod, we miss you. Chloe wants to make things right. But there were no apologies. Only rewrites. She once sent a photo of the whole family around a table. Wish you were here. I studied that photo. The empty chair didn't look empty to me. It looked untouched, as if it was never mine to begin with. I didn't reply, not out of anger, but because I didn't owe anyone my presence anymore. Because I had learned that some silence is not absence. It is presence, finally unfiltered by performance. One weekend, Marcus and I went to a small art exhibit. It wasn't famous or grand. Just local artists showing quiet pieces. I stood in front of a sculpture made of broken ceramics, stitched together with gold. Kintsugi, the card read. The art of repairing with beauty. Marcus looked at me and said, that's you. And I believed him. The following weeks were calm. I took long walks. Wrote more. Volunteered at a local clinic. Spoke softly, but not apologetically. I passed strangers and smiled. I read books I had set aside for years. I danced alone in my kitchen while dinner simmered. There was no audience. No performance. Just being. One afternoon, I passed a mother and child on the sidewalk. The child pointed at a butterfly, and the mother stopped, knelt, and listened. And I thought, that's the kind of love I deserve. The kind that pauses. I no longer carried the weight of who I was supposed to be. I wore who I was now like a well-loved sweater. Comfortable. Simple. Mine. My phone rang one evening. It was my dad. I let it ring. He left a voicemail. Hey, Anna. We're all getting together next month. Thought maybe you'd like to come. I listened twice. There was hesitation in his voice. No guilt. No responsibility. Just the suggestion that time had passed and maybe I should be over it. But I wasn't over it. I was past it. And I realized they had been waiting for me to return to the person they needed, not to the person I had become. So I didn't go. Instead, I spent that weekend painting my kitchen. A pale green, like sea glass. Soft, fresh, new. I cleaned out drawers, donated clothes, rearranged bookshelves. I cooked new recipes. I listened to music that had no memory attached. I allowed myself to exist without comparison. On the final night, I lit a candle, made a bowl of warm soup, and sat down at the table. I ate slowly. No noise. No rush. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I had to earn the right to be at the table. I was already home, and in that stillness, I understood something deeply. I had not been rejected. I had been redirected to myself. And I was enough.